I wanted to talk to you today about knowing how to see. How to look at your life and your world with clear vision. Sight is seeing what's in front of us and what has already been. Vision is looking past, seeing ahead, looking forward, seeing ahead. There was a young boy who came home from school one day. Mom asked him how his day was. He said, it was a good day, but it's kind of dark. The clouds were covered all day. It was dark. And his mother, in her wisdom, said, even in the clouds, my son, the sun was shining. You must learn to see past the clouds to find the sun in every moment. I live with a cat, and this is, I know, what he sees in the mirror. Lives the wisdom that Wayne Dyer shared with us. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. How would your world change if there was a lion in your mirror every day? There is. We just call it God. In your mirror every morning, you look into the eyes of the same energy that created you. I invite you next time you're in front of that mirror to see those eyes looking back at you. Breathe in deeply, knowing the truth of who you are, feeling who you came here to be. And then as you greet one another, know that all of those eyes, too, are the eyes of God and reflecting that same truth back to you. It is a gift to know how to look at the world around you, how to perceive the circumstances in your life in a way that expresses that idea we talk about at the front end every Sunday morning. I am always in the right time, in the right place right now. When life doesn't come with a pink ribbon around it, how do I hold on to that idea? By choosing it to be so at your depth. By choosing to see the world through God's eyes. Albert Einstein once said, I want to think the thoughts of God. What good advice, because we do. A gentleman in our history who perhaps most has exhibited in his life the ability of knowing how to see is the Italian artist Leonardo Da Vinci. We know not only was he an amazing artist, he was a scientist, an inventor, an innovator. We have proof that documents this. In 1994, Bill Gates paid $30.8 million for the sum total of Leonardo da Vinci's notes and illustrations of his life's work. The accumulated wisdom and genius of one man, worth almost $31 million in our current understanding. And the reason we know his genius existed over 400 years ago is because today we live with the results. The things he saw in the future, the things he envisioned, we now live with. I've been lucky enough to fly in a couple of helicopters. Woo-wee! I don't operate cranes, but I know they're very useful in our modern life. And I always said I'd parachute, but I kind of chickened out. And he designed double-hulled boats. He designed Army military tanks and equipment. He designed the life preserver and on bicycles, airplanes, on and on. What saw in his vision, inner vision, we have come to experience in our lifetimes. What an example of seeing past the limitations, past the ordinary situations in front of us. To see the sun behind the clouds, whether it's in evidence at the moment or not. He lived by this Latin phrase, which was his motto, sapere vedere. Sapere vedere. It means knowing how. Knowing how to see. The what comes, but how you get there, he understood to be the important issue. And it's a simple equation. It begins with our mind. All the ideas floating around in our mind are just such a gift. Now, our mind is a sort of a two-part, twofold kind of activity. There's our human intellect, where we gather data, distill it, sort, identify, plan, make judgments about, assessments about. It's often this wonderful creative gift, especially when we connect our mind to the one mind, to the universal matrix of information and source for everything around us, that energy field of unlimited potential we live in, which is the energy of God. Now, the mind is fine. I've had 1,000 thoughts probably in just, the last year that never got anywhere, didn't have any traction because I didn't put any action behind them. I was married to a physicist who once said at least 10 things that he knows he came up with before anybody else, but didn't do anything about. Could have changed the focus of his life in different directions. So that key is the action. We might get an inspired, creative, divine idea, but what do we do with it is the question. Well, sometimes we wonder, how do we get there to putting that idea into action? And that's where we employ the energy of our heart. Because this little energy plant right here in our bodies is the source of fuel for all of our dreams, folks. Let me illustrate that with an example. I was here hunting for housing, or any time in my life when I've hunted for housing. You've got your requirements. How many bedrooms do you want? How many bathrooms? You got a cat, so you got to have a pet-friendly landlord. I don't smoke, so I don't want a smoking residence. Could I have parking on the property, not on the street, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the mental process of distilling and sorting the data. But it doesn't really get any juice into the process until you use the energy of the heart. What does it feel like? What are your emotions around where you're going to live? When you start the creative process fueled from the energy of the heart, stuff happens fast. So if you are living in this example right now of hunting for a new residence, ask yourself these questions. What does it feel like when I wake up in the morning? I stretch and yawn and I open my eyes and the sun comes in all these glorious windows and I feel the breeze. There's always air movement in this place. I look out over a lovely little piece of scenery, not too far from the water. That's pretty important to some of us here in Hawaii. My cat lives with me. But it's easy to move in this new residence of mine. I get up and I go about my starting routine for the day, and it's just easy. And boom, bang, boom, pretty soon I'm done because it was so simple and organized and easeful that I'm on my way out the door to work. And when I come home at night, I step across that threshold. And my body just does this wonderful sigh of release and relief, to know that I am home in a place that embraces me. I've created sanctuary here. I find peace and am at harmony with myself in this living space. And so every evening or every day I get to be in this actual space is restful, joyful, delightful, stimulates my creativity, or provides me a restful place, whatever my needs are in the moment. This residence meets them all. That's how to go about drawing yourself to the experience that you want, whatever it is in life, is to figure out the details. Let the mind handle the details and let your heart put some juice underneath them so that you can feel it already before you ever walk across the threshold. Because then when you go to look at the ads that you're tracking, when you walk in across the threshold, you'll know it's yours. If you really get good and practiced at this, you may be looking at the classifieds in the paper and that little ad. I've had this happen. Little ad just goes, woo, 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 off the page. I opened a Craigslist listing for a car. I'd been shopping for a car for several months after I arrived. All I did was look at it and went, oh, that's my car. Because I knew what it would feel like driving it around town, driving it on the highway. I knew what that car was going to be, and all it had to do was show up and me recognize it, because I'd laid the groundwork of the mind and the heart energy. I lived with a scientist for 20 years, so I do plenty of research, but it's like that just goes in the hopper. I keep myself busy with that and entertained with that while I tell the story of what I want it to be like, to feel like in that experience. Leonardo Da Vinci must have been an expert at that process. And the third part of the equation is when we begin with the idea in our mind and we put that juice of the heart energy behind it, the right time at the right place, it's going to show up so we actually get to see it with our eyes. So when we talk about this in unity and in spiritual terms, remember, we're connecting our mind with the one mind to acquire, achieve, and access divine ideas, inspiration, guidance, wisdom. We put our feelings behind it as the fuel so that we get to have the expression of it, have the experience. It manifests in our life. Charles Fillmore is the co-founder of the Unity Movement, and Mr. Fillmore said this about vision. Spiritual vision is seeing God as the foundation of all, the source of all, the substance of all, seeing the good, the true, the beautiful everywhere. Much like Joseph, we can decide any given circumstance or person in front of us might be a problem. But if we can look past and know that we're walking with God, that we can focus on somewhere in the midst of this experience I'm in right now, there is good, there is truth, there is beauty to come. We shift our mind to seeing the lion in the mirror, the God of our being in the mirror, rather than the hapless, helpless victim in the mirror. James Allen is the gentleman who wrote As a Man Thinketh, and he prompted us with this lofty thought. Dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. What we imagine in our mind is what we step into in our experience. Now, sometimes I like a little more contemporary reference for my teachings and my own self. So if you saw the last of the Harry Potter movies, near the end, Harry has vanquished Lord Voldemort, and he's a little bit overcome. This has been, half of his life's journey, and he's still only a teenager. He can't quite get his hands around the reality of this, the magnitude of it. And he's with his mentor, Dumbledore, and he says to him, "Is this real, or has this just been happening in my head?" Now, Dumbledore, always wise if you've seen these movies, kind of Yoda-like. Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry. But why on earth should that mean it's not real? Of course it's real. If we can dream it up here, it has the potential to show up right there in front of us. It takes the fueling of that passion from our heart. It takes our guided and inspired action to move toward it. But we can achieve what we see in our mind's eye, because it's really the connection of the mind and the heart that produces the result. I invite you to consider the wisdom of applying knowing how to see in your life. If you're up for a shift in your journey of how you travel into more easeful, graceful movements in life, I invite you to state this with me. I commit to seeing life with spiritual vision. When we see from the connection to God, when we see from the point of all that is, we see past the limited ideas. We see into unlimited potential to live our life. So the simple equation of Leonardo's motto, sapere tavere, is that our mind connected to divine mind, the passion of our heart, allows the circumstance to show up in our life. I invite you to join me in centering in the idea of connecting to your divine and spiritual vision. Beloved presence, we give thanks for that connection that exists between our human mind and the mind of all that is. For that capacity to be fueled by our emotions of exhilaration and joy and delight and passion, so that we move forward with wisdom, with surety, and we find the results on our path in front of us. May your mind and your heart bring you to the vision for your life with ease and grace. Center in that idea as we hold ourselves in a sweet moment of silence.